like this. And one of the ways that you can do that, you don't want to do this, but you can do this. Because that's a much, see? We have some modeling it right there. You know, it's a friendly, you know, it's a friendlier thing. Your hand is still out, so if you need to say, wait a minute, you know, hold up, you know, I need a little space here, you've got it. You know, your hand is right out there, but your hands are out, so the other person can see that there's nothing threatening about it and about what you're doing. One of the other things to look at is, because you're going to have Joel or Connie here, if somebody is getting excited, one of the things we talk about is well, being in a situation like a room, if a person is having some stress, some anxiety, if they're hearing voices or something like that, sometimes too much stimulation, like in a room, can just, or if they have autism, can be enough to just really push them harder. So sometimes they need a little bit of quiet, they need their space, and they also need a little bit of decrease of stimulation. In that case, you're going to have to work together with them. One person to work with the individual, the guest who's having the challenge, and the other person to kind of manage the rest of the guests. Because sometimes we all like to, what's going on here? You know, what's going on? You know, let me see. You know, let me help. Why don't you do that? You know, so we just need to manage the other guests potentially to say, you know, let's just go back to bed. You know, let them handle it, so that everybody. It's for a number of reasons. It keeps the stimulation down, but it also keeps them away, so that if something does happen, they're safer. So you have to keep up for their safety. And then, you know, you guys have the training and the knowledge that potentially you might have to say, you know, come on, well, you know, let's let everybody sleep here for a minute, so let's go over here where we can talk in quiet. And then take them into a quieter space or a corner or someplace that's less stimulating. Sometimes some of the things we tell people is we usually stand too close. We all have our personal space, but sometimes if you're stressed, you know, and I guess I have to stay right here in front of this thing, but if somebody comes up to you, you know, right next to you, it's stressful. You know, it's like, get away, get away, get away. And when we're stressed, we really don't want people in our, you know, in our face. So we have to watch the distance. Sometimes we talk too much. One of the things you have to know is that if a person have any of you had any experience or know of anything about like hallucinations? Mm-hmm. Okay. If a person is having auditory, you know, sound, hearing voices, there's usually more than one voice. And a lot of times if they've lived with it for a while, they've lived with it. But sometimes they can be more disturbing and upsetting. But what happens is it's more like there's all these conversations going on in their head with different voices, and they're not necessarily friendly. They could be and they could not be. They could be saying, oh, you know, oh, shut up and just go to sleep, or why are you here and what are you doing, and on, you know, these different voices. So they can be paying attention to their voices, and if you're trying to talk to them, they don't know. They don't know you're trying to talk to them. That's why we say use their name. Say, Connie, could I talk to you for just a second? Could you pay attention to me? You look like you might be hearing some voices or some conversations in your head.
I am. I always do.
Well, I don't mean to pry, but I do need to know, what are they saying to you?
Why am I here?
Okay.
What am I doing?
The main thing you want to know is if they're saying anything about harm.
Yeah.
Are they saying anything to hurt yourself or to hurt anybody else? That if they are, then you want somebody to, like Joel or whoever, to just chat with them a little bit, because they may be saying, it's fairly common that they can be saying, you know, harmful things, but in their world, in their experience, they're kind of used to that, you know. Unfortunately, they're not necessarily totally used to it, but it can be sort of a common thing that they tell me to do this, they tell me to do this. but I just ignore them, you know. So then you have to just ask some questions to find out, are they telling you to do something now? You
Yeah.
know, that kind of thing. So it can be fairly common and familiar to them, but scary to you. So that's why you just ask the questions. And they'll usually tell you if you act respectful and talk to them carefully. They will usually, you know, be pretty honest. Although I lead a peer support group, and we have a fair number of people who do hear voices, and I have to say it's taken a while for them to actually talk about it very openly. But you just have to ask. You just have to try. And accept if they say that's enough, you know, if they back off or whatever, you just have to respect that. So we say, watch your space. One of the things about if they are hearing voices, or they tell you like there's spiders in the room, or there's snakes in the room, or something's on fire, or whatever, you don't want to play along with it. You don't want to say it's not happening, because it is very much happening in their head. It's very, very real. They are getting all of the messages in their head and sensing that it's real. So it is real for them. You just don't have the same experience. And there's no way you can play along with it. If you say, oh yeah, I see those, you know, but a lot of times they're used to people interacting with them, and they know when people are playing games with them. So if you say, oh yeah, I see them, they're gonna doubt you. And there's no way you can see the same, you don't see it, so how can you describe it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're gonna know that you're not telling them the truth, and that you'll blow all the credibility. So basically, if they say they're seeing something, you say, you know, you just acknowledge that. Wow, you know, that must be really, really scary. If you're seeing snakes or a fire, that must be really scary. So you talk about the emotion of it, you don't say, oh yeah, I see the snakes or I see the fire. You talk about the emotion of it, about what you would feel like if you saw snakes or a fire. So you probably won't encounter anything like that. But just in case you do, just so you know that.
At what point in time do you seek outside help then for this person?
Most of the people who are coming here are going to, even though they may be experiencing these things, how do I explain it? They're relatively stable in the sense that they don't need emergency help,
Okay.
basically. This is their daily experience.
And how long can that go on, period of time, like half hour, 4 hours, all night?
Most people who, even if they're not on medications, or even when they're on medications, many still are hallucinating at some level and hearing voices. They just learn how to cope with it. It can be a challenge with going to sleep sometimes, and actually some of the things you can talk about in terms of like anxiety to help people go to sleep. Some of the things is the breathing. You can talk to them about, ask them what usually helps them. So find out, they've been living with it, what usually helps. How do you deal with this? Sometimes they have sleeping pills, or sometimes maybe they listen to music. There's some other things that can help with stress and bringing somebody down when they're starting to escalate. Your brain cannot be going into escalation at the same time your body's doing something. That's why the breathing helps. So sometimes what you can also have them do is like this. It's basically a physical action that can be calming, or they can tap. Or you ask them, what's 2 things that you hear in the room? You're looking at the senses. You're asking them to use their senses. What are 2 things you hear in the room?
Talking,
Snoring. Yeah.
That would be snoring,
Sneezing.
sneezing, coughing.
What do you smell?
Sneezing.
Yeah. So you go through the senses. What are 2 things you smell? What are 2 things you taste? What are 2 things can you taste anything? You know, okay, spit, you know, whatever. There are ways of bringing them back into their body If they're trying to go to sleep, sometimes this room is nice. You can just have them count the dots. And if they can't see the dots because it's dark, have them count the squares. You know, just something to start distracting themselves. I also have been looking at, there's something, they're called calming bottles. Calming bottles. They're basically water bottles that are filled with glitter and glue. And you shake them up, and then you watch the glitter settle. And it's very, very calming. It's used with little kids, it's used with adults, all sorts of people. So I was gonna make some up. I'll bring some and you can have them so that people can just, if they need to, it's just a nice way to be bored. You know, calm yourself down, basically. Let's see. Oh, I know. Shall we do a little role play?
Well,
I would like.
Joel's gonna do
we're
this?
gonna take 2 seconds and Brandon, go ahead and redo that. I'm gonna tell you. Here, just one second. We're gonna do, you can step out of the camera.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's what's going on. And I will do. This will probably be the worst, I think, that you would experience here. So, do you just want to get into it?
I
Let's
guess
go
so.
straight into it. So why don't you stand over there? This
Over
is
here?
kind of
Okay.
Oh, where's my backpack?
Oh, excuse me, excuse me. I don't know your name.